particularly with respect to its commitments on market access and intellectual property rights, is undermining support in the United States for continued economic cooperation with China at a time when China has become the face of globalization. I strongly believe that throwing up barriers to Chinese goods is not the answer. As Treasury Secretary Paulson recently said, neither China nor the United States can protect our way to further prosperity. Rather, we have pushed for further opening of China's markets, more effective enforcement of China's IPR laws, and have encouraged China to adopt a more flexible exchange rate regime. A market-based exchange rate is fundamentally in China's interest because it would allow the central bank to focus on financial stability and inflation at home, rather than being forced to continually buy U.S. dollars to maintain the renminbi at an artificially low rate. With respect to our market access and IPR concerns, the administration has initiated 6 WTO cases against China involving market access and IPR protection. With respect to intellectual property right protection, in particular DVD piracy, let me give you an example. The runaway success in China of the American, I guess it's a hit, television show, Prison Break. Prison Break is hugely popular in China. Sometimes I think I may be the only person in China who's never seen one, never seen one of the shows. But I have a good excuse, because it's never been shown on television in China. The show has become a hit entirely through pirated DVDs and illegal downloads. But Chinese leaders do recognize that real IPR protection is in China's own interest. The Olympics helped to raise awareness of IPR with the Chinese government, as authorities went to great lengths to control usage of the Beijing 2008 Olympic logo. And we hope that they can attack movie, music, and software piracy with the same robustness and vigor. Protecting IPR doesn't just enrich Apple and Time Warner, but it allows Chinese domestic brands like Haier and Hisense to make money at the design and marketing points on the value chain, and not just in the low-margin manufacturing and assembly sectors. So far, I've concentrated on challenging bilateral issues like human rights, Taiwan, and trade. And if I were giving this speech 10 years ago, my remarks could have ended here. But in my time as ambassador, our cooperation on a regional and global scale has increased in importance. More and more, I find myself engaged with Chinese officials on crises occurring in third countries, in regions oceans away from either of our capitals. We talk about the health of the global economy. China and the United States have shared strategic economic interests that go far beyond our bilateral trade. In recognition of this, Presidents Bush and Hu Jintao agreed in April 2006 to establish a strategic economic dialogue, the SED, led by Secretary of Treasury Paulson on the U.S. side and Vice Premier Wang Qishan on the Chinese side, in their capacities as special presidential envoys, and bringing together the top economic officials from both nations to develop long-term strategic solutions to shared economic challenges and to address immediate economic issues of pressing concern. In order to promote not only a mutually beneficial economic relationship, but also to promote the continued stability, security, and prosperity of the international economic system. And I can attest that the personal ties and mutual understandings formed at the SED have proved vital in dealing with the current global financial crisis. In the global and interdependent world in which we find ourselves, our economies are far more likely to rise and fall together than diverge. I can assure you China is rooting for our economy to stabilize and prosper as our biggest investors. Another common area is public health. Cooperation in public health with China is essential to maintaining the health of our peoples. Our Centers for Disease Control work closely with China on pandemic influenzas like bird flu and together with USAID and the National Institutes of Health on HIV/AIDS. Energy is yet another area of cooperation with China. China is now the world's second largest consumer of energy and the largest emitter of greenhouse gases. More than one new coal-burning power plant comes online every week in China to meet China's huge energy demand. That puts tremendous pressure on the environment, but it also creates an opportunity and a market for American clean energy equipment and technology. No global solutions to the challenges of energy security and climate change can ignore China. That is why a 10-year framework agreement on energy and the environment will be one of the principal topics at the next Strategic Economic Dialogue meeting in Beijing this December. Non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and counterterrorism are also among the shared common interests between the United States and China. We share an interest in confronting the global threats posed by poorly governed and problematic states, but we don't always agree on what to do about them. Sudan is one of those places. China supported a security resolution that paved the way for deployment of a hybrid United Nations African Union peacekeeping force in Darfur. China has already sent more than 300 engineering troops to this force to establish the bases and infrastructure. But we still have substantial differences over how to approach Sudan. China's continued investment and trade, particularly in conventional weapons with the Sudanese regime, have drawn international criticism. We continue to urge China to use its influence in Khartoum to help end the violence and suffering in Darfur. Nor do we see eye to eye in Burma. About Burma. Burma is another problematic state where China enjoys significant influence. Though China has supported the efforts of United Nations Special Advisor Gambari on Burma to improve the political situation there, China continues to back a military regime that disregards the desires of the Burmese people. Although China is motivated by a desire to preserve stability in a neighboring country, their support for the regime, in fact, continues to undermine Burma's chances for long-term stability. Another neighboring country, North Korea, presents a significant challenge to Northeast Asia's security, impacting not only our allies in South Korea and Japan, but also China. The United States and China share a common interest in improving security and stability in the neighborhood through the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And here we've seen China's encouraging words to that effect backed by actions. When North Korea tested a nuclear device in October 2006, China voted in the United Nations Security Council to impose sanctions against Pyongyang. This was a major departure from Beijing's traditional policy toward Pyongyang, a policy that emphasized China and North Korea were comrades as close as lips and teeth. Indeed, China has played a critical role in hosting the six-party talks. We still have a long way to go, however, to realize complete and verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And the process has encountered many delays and obstacles. And in fact, as I'm sure some of you are aware, our lead negotiator, Ambassador Chris Hill, is in Pyongyang at this very minute trying to break the current impasse over a verification protocol. But the six-party process would not have come this far without China's support and involvement. China has also joined with us in refusing to recognize the breakaway Georgian republics of South Ossetia and Abkhazia as independent states in the face of Russian aggression, and in confirming Georgia's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The Chinese also share our goal of preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. China understands that the destabilizing impact of a nuclear-armed Iran would have, including its effect on energy security. China has supported UN Security Council efforts to sanction Iran in the past and worked with us and other nations to create an incentives package for Tehran to cease its nuclear activities.